2,000 federal agents being dispatched to Minneapolis. Fraud investigations and immigration enforcement, this according to CBS News, might not have anything to do with Tim Walz dropping out of the race. We'll get to that and more. Sam Mirejovsky here behind the What's Right microphone, friends. Good to be with you. Happy Monday, 5th of January. What a weekend, huh? What a weekend. Saturday morning, I got up at the crack of dawn to join Newsmax for what was going to be a segment about the big Supreme Court cases of the year that were coming up on the calendar. So I was all ready to go and everything. And of course, the hit didn't happen because Venezuela, news of the daring raid on Caracas, where their now former president was picked up by our special forces, flown out of the country, and sent to New York to stand trial on drug trafficking charges. So, of course, everybody's been reacting to this. I have my take. And if I, by the way, email sam@whatsrightshow.com, sam@whatsrightshow.com. That's where you can reach me. And, of course, find me on Twitter, now known as X, and that's at What's Right Sam. So, folks, if we are able to control the oil in Venezuela, we, the United States, would have approximately 50% of the world's crude reserves. That's how significant of an energy producer Venezuela is. And that's not even it, really. Keeping China away from it, keeping Russia, keeping Iran away from Venezuela is vital to our national interests. To some of these people out there, to some of these left-wingers who no matter what Trump does, right? I mean, again, Trump could come in, cure cancer, and they would still be absolutely beside themselves about it. Well, they would become fans of cancer. I'm convinced of this. Because the response to this, what I thought was a flawlessly executed raid operation, they grabbed the guy, popped a few dudes, got in the helicopters, flew them out, bam, bam. It happened that quick. 88 minutes? I think that's what I heard. 88 minutes to just get into the country and get out. Unbelievable. Took months of planning, and I'll take you through all of that here this hour. But the response to this by the people that hate Trump was, I mean, basically, they came out in support of Maduro. I guess these are the leftists that are crying about international law. None of these people cried about international law when Maduro's thugs were roaming around the country. Well, now for what this regime, the Chavez regime's been there, over 25 years? You know how many people have been disappeared, arrested without due process, without cause, tortured, murdered? How much property private property has been confiscated? You know, think about, ask the American oil companies who invested billions of dollars in Venezuela, only to have their assets seized by the Chavez regime. Ask those people, ask those shareholders if they agree with Donald Trump and what he's doing here. It was foreign, Western companies, primarily American companies, who went into Venezuela, invested in Venezuela, only to have it stolen by the communists. And who then benefited from it? Well, more communists, i.e. China, Russia, and of course, Iran. The whole thing, this has been, honestly, long overdue. Well, Sam, it's just about the oil. I hope it's about the oil. I hope that is what Trump wants. Now, remember, there's a lot of other things going on in the world. Now, I'm going to try not to skip around too much, but I got a lot on my mind here, folks, so just bear with me. There is a war in Ukraine. Maybe you've heard about this. And if you take Trump at his word, he wants that war to end. About 30,000 soldiers on both sides are dying each month. Trump talked about this actually in his remarks later on Saturday. There are a lot of people dying. Trump keeps talking. Now, what has been going on behind the scenes? I'll tell you in no uncertain terms. I'm positive about this, although there's some different people say different things. But here's the fundamentals of it. Putin is the Russians are coming to the Trump people and are telling them, hey, whatever, we don't need to end this war. We're fine. We can fund this conflict in perpetuity. We're a huge country. We'll never run out of people. Ukraine will run out of people before we do. And by the way, we have oil. We have gas. We have these natural resources, energy resources that we are able to sell on the open market. And guess what? Even though you've sanctioned us, we still have people that we can sell it to, i.e. China. Now, the Russians already have to take a discount on their oil prices as is. Why? Because if something is sanctioned and you can't sell it to the entire market, by definition, there are fewer buyers for your good, hence the good goes down in price. It has to. There's a discount. Now imagine that Trump, who is, I would think, based on all of his public pronouncements, would love to see gas prices at laughable levels. Imagine now we take over Venezuela and begin in the course of a year to produce oil and export it around the world on the open market. What is that going to do? Basic understanding of supply and demand. What will that do to the price of oil? I have a clue to you. It's going to go down. The price of oil will tank. And when it does, Vladimir Putin's war fund gets chopped in half at a minimum. It's a disaster. Who wants Russian oil? It's embargoed. It's sanctioned. They can have all the oil you want for less money from Venezuela. Hell, people buying Russian oil may go down to zero. They won't need it. This is what you're dealing. So everybody out there, it's about the oil. Of course it's about the oil, but wait a minute. If you didn't want Trump to do this, you're really on the side, this is what I love telling the libs, you're really on the side of Vladimir Putin, for example. You're really on the side of Iran and Hezbollah. You're really on the side of the Chi-Coms. The Chi-Coms were having, did you see this? They had a meeting. They sent their envoys to meet with the deposed president, with Nicolas Maduro. They sat there, they literally had a meeting, and 2 hours later, Delta Force shows up and bags him. I think the Chinese were still in town, literally, a mile away from all of this. And yes, China is furious because they were and have been setting up this outpost in our hemisphere. And we told them, enough, you're not doing it. Literally, while they're there, and you'd almost think that the timing was deliberate, while we were there, go and grab the guy that they're meeting with. Huge, giant double FU to China. No, this thing is brilliant. And this Iran was getting money from this. Do you know what's going on in Iran right now? As we speak, Iranian patriots are rising up against the regime in a way that really has been unprecedented in my lifetime. It's not being widely reported, this is the largest uprising against the Islamic regime since its inception. And the regime is wounded, right? It's wounded. It's getting supply flights coming in from China and from Russia, and you see it. I mean, it's just on its, I think it's going through some, just the last bits of gasps, fits and gasps. It's on its way out. And so while they're in the death throes, they lose a major energy partner. Unbelievable. This is how you do things. Contrast what Trump is doing with the way Biden and his joint chiefs handled, for example, the withdrawal from Afghanistan. There's just no comparison. Trump has changed the military in 1 year. Hegseth, the Fox News host, the TV guy, Pete Hegseth has transformed this Department of War. And we are going in there. People are respecting us. Finally, it is a beautiful thing to behold. Quick break here. Bear with me as we go through it all. And I promise I'm gonna really endeavor to cover every aspect of this that I need to. But I just wanted to point this out. It's about the oil. It's about the oil. Yes, I give it to you. I hope it's about the oil. Because that quest for what Venezuela has in both its reserves and capability of future production is game-changing from a geopolitical perspective. Game-changing. He that controls Venezuelan oil today controls the world. Sam Mirejovsky here behind the What's Right microphone. Folks, I'll be right back.
I'm the best.
Personal injury law has been the same for a long time.
The best.
Big egos, greed, and sleazy schemes. We've had enough. Welcome to Sam and Ash, the new standard for personal injury law, where things are done the right way, because you deserve a team that delivers real support and results. When you have both, your whole world can change. Sam and Ash Injury Law, because you deserve what's right.
I think one of the best parts of this raid on Caracas, on Venezuela, by our special forces and military on Saturday morning was the bombing of Hugo Chavez's mausoleum. Sam Mirejovsky here behind the What's Right microphone in the early hours of Saturday morning as news of this daring raid spread across the world. It was reported that Hugo Chavez's dead body was spontaneously cremated by U.S. military forces. People were really bent out of shape about this. Let me tell you what I think about the desecration, alleged desecration of Hugo Chavez's corpse. You know, I don't know what it is about Bolsheviks, about commie pinkos like Chavez and many others who love to be embalmed after death and then put on display for their quote-unquote adoring people. In my parents' country, in Czechoslovakia, now the Czech Republic, my parents were little, young, the communist dictator of the country, the guy that brought communism to Czechoslovakia, was named Klement Gottwald. And he was a butcher. He was an absolute beast. I'm talking about international norms. Yeah, he did not follow any of those. Anyway, killed a lot of people. Obviously, a lot of people went to prison, to labor camps, Siberia, all horrible stuff. And when he died, they did the same thing. Embalmed him, and they made built this mausoleum for him at the top of a mountain in Prague. And then I think this is the part that really gets me. They made the people go and pay homage to his corpse. I made him go there and lay flowers and performative, honoring of this monster posthumously. And in honoring him, right? This is the terrible thing. It took his victims, the people whose lives he destroyed, and made them go and honor him. Do you know how many Czech people, my parents included, would have loved if the Americans showed up somewhere in the 50s and just blew the thing out of the ground? I'm telling you, trust me when there are pictures actually of this tomb, of this Chavez tomb, where the entire neighborhoods around it are dark because they've run out of electricity. The country that has more energy available, run out of electricity. They've run out of power. Ordinary people can't turn the light bulbs on. And he's got floodlights, and everything, and just lit up as if it was daylight around his tomb. Yeah, I'm not the least bit bothered by this whatsoever. All right. That's just one of the. That's just, I don't know if maybe there was a something of a strategic importance on top of the mausoleum, like a anti-aircraft antenna or something. I would have believed that Trump, specifically ordered they just take out the tomb while they're in the country. So anyway, the vice president now has become the president. And this is what's different between Trump and Bush. A lot of you have been emailing me. And my email is sam@whatsrightshow.com. Been emailing me, says, Trump is no different from Bush. He's going to go in there, govern. We're going to nation build. Guys, it's the same thing. Can we just wait a minute? Can we wait? Can we just give Donaldus Maximus, El Presidente, Trump, and his soon-to-be declared viceroy of Venezuela, Marco Rubio, can we just give them a moment to flesh out their plan? Because, one thing that I noticed right away is they said, okay, well, we'll deal with the new vice president. Who cares if she's a communist? It's kind of what Trump said. He's like, who cares? I mean, all right, well, he got asked about the opposition leader. Remember this? This is the opposition leader who, she didn't run in the last election. There's a guy that supposedly won that election, but she's the one who got the Nobel Peace Prize. And she's the one who donated or dedicated the Nobel Peace Prize, her win, to President Trump. And a lot of people came out, well, now we're going to go install her as president, of course. And Trump's like, whoa, not so fast. And in the press conference, he said something very important. He said, we don't believe that she has, broad support. People said, what do you mean? What do you mean? Oh, of course she's got broad support. And the story behind the scenes is actually gives me the most hope that this Trump administration, that this Trump 2.0 era that we are in is nothing like Bush, Cheney, and Rumsfeld. And here's why. Trump says, it turns out that they had been talking to her for months. And they wanted to know if she could take power, if she would have, if inserted into the country following the ouster of Maduro, if she would have the ability to command the military. And the Trump people became convinced that wouldn't be the case. Now, this tells me they're not ideological about this at all. They really don't care if you're a communist, right? They just want you not to be Maduro. And they want you to play ball with America. Call yourself whatever you will. Are you our friend? Yes or no? You cannot be a host to Iran. You cannot be a host to Hezbollah. You cannot be a host to Russia and to China. They're out. We're in. And whoever can control military and the police and keep order, that person is who we will dance with. This is radically different. And this is why perhaps I'm not as exuberant on the whole, we're conquering communism thing. We're not conquering communism because meanwhile, Mamdani had become mayor of New York and is already talking about how basically rent is racist. So, next thing we're going to have to send in Delta forces to take out Mamdani and clean out New York if we're going to make it ideological. So Trump here is saying, look, we don't want Venezuela to fall. We don't want Venezuela to break apart. We don't want warring factions. We want this to devolve into a mess. The Supreme Court, with Maduro, in a tracksuit on his way to New York, the Supreme Court of Venezuela installed the vice president as acting president. She's making noises about how bad, the American Satan is. And Trump basically says, hey, I don't care. You either play ball with us or you don't. And if you don't, you're going to end up worse than Maduro. That I can promise you. And don't you think maybe, just maybe, I'm going to throw this out there, that people are taking Trump seriously now? Of course they are. So let this thing play out. It's going to be fascinating, but this is not we're going to invade the country, boots on the ground, take over the Capitol, take over the buildings, install, a governor. I mean, that may come later once the situation is stabilized. But at this initial phase, it's very much just a surgical removal of Maduro. It's fascinating stuff. And it's not at all like Bush Cheney, okay? It's not. So y'all can calm down, please. Again, Sam at what'srightshow.com. Looking forward to your emails, and I'm scanning through them here during the break, so keep them coming, please. All right, bottom of the hour here. Got to take an obscene profit time out. I'll be back in just a couple minutes. Sam Mirejovsky here for Sam and Ash Injury Law. I mentioned over the holiday that we had a client, a listener, longtime listener of the program, reach out to the firm on Christmas morning. Had an emergency, needed help, was in an accident, wanted to get good legal advice, wanted to hire a lawyer. He was doing the right thing. This is what you should do when you get into an accident, even if it's a minor accident, so that your rights are preserved and you don't end up getting taken by the insurance company or the guy that hit you and end up thousands of dollars upside down. So he sends out an email actually to me, to my show email, and I forwarded it on to the team early Christmas morning. And by about, I think, 10 o'clock in the morning, maybe even 9 o'clock, he was already signed up and on his way to getting taken care of. That's how easy it is at Sam and Ash Injury Law to get the right lawyer on your side. You get a call right away. You can take care of things on the phone. You have to go anywhere. And then from that point forward, Sam and Ash takes care of everything for you. Now, I know this because, of course, it's my firm and I know how we operate. I built it from the ground up together with my wonderfully brilliant law partner, Ash Watkins, and this is how we do it. It's so simple. I appreciate the confidence. This is what happens when listeners listen to what I have to say here on the program. 800-304-2000. That's the number that works in Nevada, it works in California, works in any state that you're in. We have offices in Nevada, in Las Vegas, and California. And we love what we do. samandashlaw.com. samandashlaw.com. Sam and Ash, because you deserve what's right. All right, folks, Sam Mirejovsky here, the What's Right Show, brought to you by Sam and Ash Injury Law here. Having a fantastic Monday. How are you feeling? I'm going to just a temperature check. How do you feel? Because all my Trump-loving friends, I would say for the most part, are on cloud 9 after Saturday. Trump demonstrated this is how you do it. We've obviously come a long way from where the military was under Biden. And it tells me the good people were there. They were always there. The good people were just being kept down by the Looney Tune clowns that were put in places of power and authority within the then Department of Defense. So please buy this. And Robbie and I were talking during the break, and a great point Robbie made about how to understand the difference between the Trump team and, let's say, Bush Cheney in the Iraq era, where the U.S. military was sent in successfully to Afghanistan, successfully into Iraq. In Iraq's case, for example, going in and meeting all the military objectives, right? Just going through the country. And then you had people who were in the Ba'ath Party and who are part of the Revolutionary Guard, right? And all the kind of elements of the Ba'athist regime and the Hussein regime, and they were all sacked. They were all fired and arrested, and some of them eliminated. And in retrospect, those are the people who knew how to run the country, and getting rid of them as quickly as we did, although satisfying certainly to dispatch your enemy, proved to be a fatal mistake for the U.S. And I think Trump has learned, and his team has learned from this, and this is why you see them on stage and dealing with the Chavist. And I say Chavist because the country was the communist country of Venezuela. Was founded by Hugo Chavez, which is a guy whose tomb Trump also blew up on his way into the country or out. Details vary. Okay, So the Chavez regime, right? So we're dealing with the vice presidents there. This lady that now is the acting president. She doesn't seem like a nice person at all. But Trump's basically said to her, listen, lady, behave. Behaving is defined as doing what America wants you to do. We're in charge now. You're done. You don't control your airspace. You don't control your military. You're done. We're here. You behave, or you're going to meet a fate worse than even Nicolas Maduro. I think after Saturday's display of force, that is that's not an empty threat. Here's the way this raid, the way it unfolded is unbelievable. But what came down to about 88 minutes of actual on the ground time. This took months and months to prepare. It was called Operation Absolute Resolve. You know that last week, about a week before the raid, Trump had told President Maduro that he had to go. And there were some negotiations back and forth, and Maduro was offered basically safe passage and some amount of money to vacate the country. He refused to do it. Actually, he countered with a ridiculous demand. And then he went on TV and did his little stupid dancing. And Trump at some point basically said, this guy is not taking it seriously. Trump said in the phone call, you got to surrender. All right? He got to surrender. And Maduro took the gamble. Trump in this presser said, he was going to give in, right? He was going to give in. But then he chose not to. So that was that. I mean, this is sort of how it was all laid up. So the Trump team though was ready to go, because at least as early as August, the CIA was already on the ground, and they had dispatched a small unit into Venezuela that sought to get, as they called it, extraordinary insight into Maduro's movements. Dan Raisin Kane, the general and chairman of Joint Chiefs of Staff, said in his news conference that these people went in and basically were able to create back home a replica of the presidential compound. And they practiced in it. They basically practiced in it so much that they could go through the rooms blindfolded. These were the same protocols used to train troops who captured Osama bin Laden back in 2011. So they were ready, is my point, right? They were ready. And what's interesting is he wasn't at the Miraflores presidential palace. Maduro was on a military base, in a safe house on a military base. And the Trump, we knew it. We knew where he was. We knew exactly what room he'd be in. We knew where his safe room was and his procedures for getting in there. Remember, Trump held his presser and he says, I was moments from getting in there. He was this close. He was already closing the door. And Trump is a master storyteller, and the media always loves to trash how Trump tells a story. It's far more captivating than when you have the Obama types and even the Bush types try to talk about this stuff. No, he's a great narrator. So it came down to a hair, but still, they knew everything about him. They knew what pets he had. They knew where his kids were, the whole 9 yards. And I think this is something nobody's saying. I think that one of the most horrifying things that's going to happen right now moving forward, and I feel bad almost for some of these Venezuelan regime enablers, people in positions of power, for example, in the military, that the remaining power structure under immense pressure from President Trump is going to begin to do what communist dictators do when they are fearful of traitors. A deep And unending paranoia is going to set in at the highest echelons of remaining Venezuelan leadership. And they are going to go in and they're going to start torturing people. I mean, people in the, high-ranking people in the military, and interrogating them, and removing them from positions and promoting junior people up who they feel they can trust more. I mean, it is going to be well, do you think that the military is going to stay loyal to the Maduro regime, or what's left of it, after the regime goes on a murder spree through its ranks? The only way, and Trump is admitting it openly, and again, I think he's admitting it openly on purpose to make the Venezuelans maximally paranoid. Trump is saying, yeah, we basically knew everything. We knew where he took a dump. We knew where he ate breakfast. We knew where where his dog slept. We knew where him and his wife were going to be. I mean, we knew everything about him. I mean, this is nothing. Sorry, guys. So that wasn't because they had hid, an AirPod somewhere on Maduro's gloriously out of shape body, but it's because they had human assets on the inside. People were, people giving him up, and they're going to give up the next lady. They're going to do that too. What was the bounty on his head, Robbie? It was $50 million. Woo, that's a lot of scratch down in Venezuela. Trust me, you could relocate to anywhere in the world with $50 million, right? So the people that turned him, helped us nab him are going to be living in the French Riviera, toot sweet, as they say. All right, be right back. Sam Mirejovsky here behind the What's Right microphone. The What's Right show brought to you by Sam and Ash Injury Law, because you deserve what's right. More details on the incredible raid on Caracas, the mission to extract former President Nicolas Maduro and his wife from Venezuela. Sam Mirejovsky here, your host in these incredible times. Sam at what'srightshow.com is my email. And, understanding that regime change is not necessarily what's happening here, evidenced by the fact that Trump is perfectly willing, allowing Maduro's own deputy vice president to take control of the country, so long as Venezuela plays ball with the U.S. I'm just going to say this as a lifelong anti-communist, as someone who is in the U.S. because my parents fled communism in Eastern Europe. Days like this make me happy. And I don't need to explain that any more than listen, dead communists, great thing. Did you hear this? This is the best part. Cuba is screaming that they lost 30 people or 35 people in the raid. I guess they were all on that military base. Here's a question. What are the Cubans doing down there? Right? I mean, this is serious media outlets. Wow, predictable mainstream media people, right, are going, oh, but we killed Cubans and now we're in a conflict with Cuba. Oh, no, what's going to happen? Oh, no, Cuba's going to get us. Really? If I'm the president of Cuba right now, I'd be sleeping with both eyes open. Right? I mean, oh, no. Imagine any place, right? Any place that is in the Western Hemisphere, in our sphere of influence, right? Getting into Monroe Doctrine stuff, in our sphere of influence, in our proverbial backyard. And who's there? Hezbollah, okay? Iran, almost the same thing. The Cubans, Russians. What? Oh, by the way, Russia was sending a bunch of military technology to Venezuela. Ditto the Chicoms. They were all, Venezuela was selling oil or trading oil basically for military equipment. And the military equipment failed. And I don't know. I think this is a part of the story as we kind of get further along here. A part of the story is going to be, well, What the hell was wrong with this technology? I thought the Chinese were light years ahead of us. I keep hearing how the Chinese are going to take over the universe. And don't get me wrong, I still consider China to be a formidable enemy and a key geopolitical foe of the United States, and presents perhaps the greatest nation-state danger to us. I just think it's important to point out that their technology was deployed. The radar, some of the radar technology there was in fact Chinese. And it was supposed to pick up aircraft that was otherwise had stealth capability. And that's, well, the US, what did we deploy? F-35s? F-35s, I think, went in. Well, clearly, look, I mean, it's sort of the matter speaks for itself, right? The air defenses did not work. I think all of our aircraft came back. There was one that they said was damaged, but it limped back to the Iwo Jima, to the carrier group, to the Jerry Ford. Yeah, I don't know. I'm just pointing this out. I'm just saying it all failed. This was the new axis of evil, right? These are all of the enemies of the U.S. And they all got screwed. I mean, it collectively together in the same day. Oh, I love this. This is another thing I love. Let me say this before I forget. How many times in the last 48 hours have you heard from somebody somewhere prognosticating, I guess Putin can just go into Kiev now and grab Zelensky? I guess he can just do that, Robbie. Herder, I guess nothing's stopping Putin from just bagging Zelensky and bringing him to Moscow. Hey, I don't know how to tell you idiots in the back. Putin tried that. Putin did that. I think it was February 24th? Right when the war broke out, 2022. 4 years ago next month, Putin tried that move. He sent his special forces into Kyiv. They went to the airport, and, I'll be honest, when it was all happening, I was like, Zelensky's a dead man. That's what I was thinking in my head. I mean, I just thought this was a certain thing. I thought I had some reservations. But even I thought that versus Ukraine, the Russian military was going to get the job done. Well, here's the problem. If anybody tries to tell you this, Putin can just do that. He can't do it because he's incapable of doing it, and because the Russian military hasn't improved, really, in the last 4 years. They're losing people, they're losing generals, they're losing equipment. They're probably getting some tactics are improving, but whatnot. But they can't do it. And this brings me to a very important point about international law. Are you ready for this? And I talk to you as a lawyer. People will say it was a violation of international law. And everybody that says that always sounds like they're breathing, they're speaking through their nose. International law. Where do I begin on this? Law, okay, I'm not going to talk about justice, but I'm going to say law. Law is only as strong, or I would say maybe as valid, as the power behind it. Let me give you an example. Why is Benjamin Netanyahu rolling around the world visiting, for example, Trump a few days before all this transpired, visiting Trump at Mar-a-Lago, and flying around, generally speaking, with impunity around the world? Well, he's under indictment by the International Criminal Court. There's an arrest warrant for Bibi Netanyahu, Prime Minister of Israel. There's an arrest warrant out for it. Why hasn't he been arrested in Israel, for example? Why didn't they haul him out of the Prime Minister's residence and bring him to The Hague, bring him to Europe and put him on trial? How do I put this nicely? Because they can't. And at some point, your law only matters to the extent that you can exercise jurisdiction. And the only way you exercise jurisdiction, right, personal jurisdiction over someone or something, an entity, a person, is through military force or police force, right? There has to be an enforcement mechanism. So what happens? There are laws in New York City or in San Francisco about, crapping on sidewalks, but it's not enforced. So people crap on sidewalks. It's as if the law doesn't exist. It's kind of the same thing. And the Europeans and the libs don't enforce anything. They don't know about enforcement. They just think, wag their finger. But it's the law. It's the law. No, you need police to enforce the law, and you need, DAs to put people in jail to enforce the law. Otherwise, you don't have law. And the same is true for the International Criminal Court. The law doesn't matter. Do you think the ICC or the UN would stop China from taking over Taiwan? No chance in heck. International law, my foot. I'm so sick of absolute pansies. All right, top of the hour. Sam Mirejovsky, quick break here from the What's Right show. We'll be back in just a few minutes. Don't go anywhere. More on this and other topics. Minnesota. We got to get to Minnesota. Trust me. It's good. Folks, those of you who had the chance to listen to Friday's show, well, remember that I said that the fraud uncovered in Minnesota that was coming to light over the last several weeks, that it would become the defining story of 2026. I said that, and I stand by it, and today's news only underscores just how right I am. Sam Mirejovsky here behind the What's Right microphone. Friends, welcome to the program. Good to be with you as always. I am Nevada's favorite recovering Californian, and as such, I understand how these Democrats operate. California is next, right? California is going to talk about my former home state. California has fraud orders of magnitude higher, bigger, worse than what you're seeing coming out of Minnesota. So, but Minnesota is the beginning. So kind of where this whole thing has started. And it's not just the child care facilities. You've got Nick Shirley going around with his camera, going around to places going, hey, you guys supposedly have 300 kids here. I haven't, been posted up for 2 days. I'm not seeing anybody. What's up with that? And they're trying to say, well, it was Christmas time. Of course, there were no kids. Were the parents at work? This all happened before Christmas, right? These are child care facilities for parents that work and can't take care of their kids during the day. Did all 300 kids in every single one of these facilities, did all those parents decide to take 2-3 weeks off for the holidays? I mean, they really want us to suspend disbelief, but it's not just about that. It's about the autism centers. It's about homeless care, homeless solutions that never seem to solve anything, except for make the people running those programs more wealthy. And we, the taxpayers, have had enough of it. Now, if there was no there, I don't think Tim Walz would be dropping out of the race. Tim Walz, my psychological assessment of him, and that's the big news today, right? Tim Walz is dropping out. He's not going to run for a third term, which Axios describes as unprecedented. It would have been an unprecedented third consecutive term, meaning no other governor in the history of Minnesota's run for a third term. But Tim Walz felt that he could, that he should, and that certainly he, was likely to prevail given his huge name ID coming out of the general election in 2024. So he was, going to be the Democratic nominee, and all things considered, if none of this fraud stuff had come to light, probably would have won. We've claimed a huge victory here. And again, would he be dropping out if this was nothing? If there was no truth to these allegations? My sense is, and I'll as time goes on, we'll figure out if I'm right. My sense is that he believes he's going to be indicted. There are two kinds of people when facing a major criminal indictment. Two kinds of people. There's the kind of person that recognizes that going up against the federal government, going up against the Department of Justice, is not a fair fight. You could be innocent and going up against the federal government and federal prosecutors, and you're likely to lose. You're likely to go to jail. Okay, that's just the nature of it. And I've talked about this many times on the program. I'm not going to detour here now to explain why. But the deck is stacked against you. When you become a criminal defendant in a federal case, you are screwed. And so there's two kinds of people. When they face that, basically most people immediately recognize that it's a life and death fight. And if you're somebody in 50, 60-year-old person, it's literally, this could be the end of your life. So you immediately think about what assets you're going to sell to pay for your legal fees. You're immediately thinking about what lawyer you're going to find. That lawyer's giving you, and your whole life will become fighting this case. It's all you think about. It's all you have time for. It's the only thing you have energy to do. Going to work, don't even think about it. It's over. Your life as you know it is over. Even if you win, your life as you know it is over. Most people are like that. Then there's Donald Trump. Donald Trump is the example of somebody who can have 4 indictments against him and still run for president and still fight because he doesn't give up. And it's an unusual thing. The people at the Biden Department of Justice were absolutely convinced that simply by filing charges against Trump, he would drop out of the race. So I believe Walz, who is a weakling, who is an absolute, just a beta man, believes that he is in for a fight for his life, and he's not going to run. He's not going to run. He can't do it, and he's going to convert his money that he would spend on the election for his legal defense fund if he can do it. Right? He is circling the wagons, and so what we know, if that's true, what we know is that the investigation into what's going on in Minnesota is more advanced than just, and I'm not putting Nick Shirley down and on, is more advanced than just a young man, running around with a camera and recording all this. That the federal government has already been moving on this, and they've been moving on it for some time, because these indictments don't get drafted and the investigations don't happen overnight. So this year, I keep telling you, this is a good buckle up year, because let's look at how the dominoes will fall. If what we believe is true in California, that it's similar, maybe worse, certainly worse in terms of scale, to what's going on in Minnesota, what does that do to Gavin Newsom? I keep hearing that Newsom is running for president. I mean, now lately he doesn't even deny it, right? I think in one recent interview he actually said, yeah, of course, I'm looking at it. Now, Newsom could be have stronger, greater fortitude than somebody like little tampon Timmy Walz, but it's going to inflict damage on Newsom. And Newsom isn't the same kind of fighter and the same kind of deflector that Trump is. Trump was obviously prosecuted unfairly, prosecuted on completely bogus charges. Nobody was charging Trump with stealing, looting the government when he was president. But that's what these charges are going to be against Walz and against Newsom. They're going to go after these guys because they've eluded their states. And they've personally benefited from money being awarded in these state contracts. And then they have personally used their power to cover up said crimes. These are just allegations. These are things that I'm supposing, right? I'm not giving this to you as fact. I'm just saying this is how it's going to play out. And it's a far more serious charge. And it's one that you can't just say, whoa, this is Trump going after me. I mean, that's what they're going to say. And the folks over at CNN and CBS News and ABC are going to help them. They're going to run interference for them as they do. But where's the mood of the country? And again, this is I was talking about on Friday. I mean, the mood of the country is we as taxpayers are starting to feel like we're the dumb ones. What the hell are we doing? We are just, you and I are just, what? Paying our taxes, working, paying our taxes, working some more, paying our taxes some more. And we're on the hamster wheel. And these people show up from flipping Somalia, whatever the hell they're from, and they're like, oh, hey, we're just going to open up a daycare center. All of a sudden, they're making $2-3 million a year, each and every one of them. And they're allowed to do it so long as they funnel money back to the campaigns and family members of, politicians who are in office. Because then they, in turn, turn a blind eye. No, I'm fairly certain that we, tax-paying, money-earning, doing it the right way Americans are pissed off as all heck about this. And then the media is going to try to run interference for Newsom, thinking he's the great white hope. And I don't know. I don't see that happening very well. But we may end up going back to today's program a year from now, and you'll hear just how right I was. Sam Mirejovsky here on the What's Right Media Network, the What's Right show brought to you by Sam and Ash Injury Law. In a crash, call Sam and Ash, 1-800-304-2000, 800-304-2000, Nevada and California, samandashlaw.com, because you deserve what's right.
The Sam and Ash team, they wanted me to have the best care. They had my interests at heart. I have an enormous amount of gratitude. I cannot say enough thank you.
All right, people, listen up. If you've been in an accident, if you've been injured, big injury, small injury, it doesn't matter. If you don't know what your rights are, you're going to get taken advantage of. It'll cost you money. Just doing the right thing, quote unquote, right? Palms up, going to the insurance company, to your own adjuster, to your own insurer, and saying, this is what happened. I'm in the right. The other person's in the wrong. Cover me, take care of me, and we're fine here. Doing that, believe it or not, is not going to get you taken care of. These insurance companies are obligated to only do the bare minimum. And most of the time, that means you end up upside down. Sam and Ash Injury Law sees to it that you are made whole. It's not a lottery win. It's a matter of getting what's right. And if you don't, you'll end up with money out of your pocket, and you can't afford to do that. So don't do it alone. Don't go at it alone. It's not a DIY project. Call Sam and Ash Injury Law today. 1-800-304-2000. 800-304-2000. That's the number. No matter where you're at. We have offices here in Nevada, in California. 800-304-2000. The website, samandashlaw.com. samandashlaw.com. Sam and Ash Injury Law. Because you deserve what's right. All right, folks. I tell you, things, just as we are finding out how fundamentally broken the utopia of socialism was in the country of Venezuela, we have people inside our borders, inside this country, who are, I think they're going to try to take a crack at this socialism thing again. And I'm talking about New York City. Welcome to the program. The What's Right show is on. Sam at whatsrightshow.com is my email. So, yeah, there is a appointment made by the new mayor of New York City, Mamdani, and he's got this lady named Weaver who's bringing this absolutely wild stuff. She is I guess an advocate, a tenant advocate. She is giving an interview here about her belief of, kind of viewpoint on tenants and on property ownership. Listen to this and tell me, is this full communism or what?
I think the reality is that for centuries, we've really treated property as an individualized good and not a collective good. And we are going to transitioning to treating it as a collective good and towards a model of shared equity will require that we think about it differently. And it will mean that families, especially white families, but some POC families who are homeowners as well, are going to have a different relationship to property than the one that we currently have.
What? Collective ownership? This is a person who's going to be in charge of housing under Mamdani. This is America's biggest, used to be most prosperous city. Collective, we're going to have to rethink property rights. I mean, to me, it sounds like what they want to do is practice collectivism. And after all, Mamdani promised this on the 1st in his speech. Remember this line? Have we forgotten what he said? It's time you begin to take these liberals at their word.
We will replace the frigidity of rugged individualism with the warmth of collectivism. I was elected as a democratic socialist, and I will govern as a democratic socialist. I will not abandon my principles for fear of being deemed radical.
Well, don't worry. We all firmly believe you're a radical, Mr. Mayor. Collectivized, right? This is the term communists use this term, right? When they take private property and render it state-owned, essentially stealing it for themselves. And go back to Venezuela. It's a great instructive example on this. For example, everyone talking today about the oil. When Venezuela was a capitalist country, the oil there made virtually the entire country rich. And lots of oil was being produced and sent around the world. Now, the Chavists, under Hugo Chavez and later under Nicolas Maduro, decided to do what? They collectivized, they stole the means of production. They stole these refineries. And all of a sudden, production and output went way down. Now, it was still enough to make Maduro rich. If you go on social media today, a lot of Maduro stuff going out around there, and not all of it is political. And one of the things that's making the rounds are videos of him with all of his watches. Apparently, he had quite a nice watch collection. He had one Rolex that was worth at least $80,000 that he wore frequently. So Maduro made money. He traveled the world. He ate at, Salt Bay Steakhouse in Istanbul and devoured a steak worth $1,000. And meanwhile, people in his country, that would represent, for most people, more than a year's salary. So the elites will continue. They had enough money. They lived well. But of course, the little people didn't, and they don't. And that's how communism works. Imagine for a minute that this crazy Weaver lady decides, and that the feds under Trump don't stop her. And there's plenty of federal law that would prohibit her from doing any of this. Okay. But let's just suppose for a minute that she would be successful in saying, you know what, the way to be fair here with tenants is we're going to take a building that is owned by landlord X and make it the co-op ownership of the tenants in the building. Well, I'll tell you exactly how that plays out. My family, before coming out of World War II, right, once the war was won, the Allies won the war, 1945, had a number of apartment buildings across the Czech Republic. My family was very well to do. And these buildings were quickly confiscated by the communists when they came to power in 1948. These buildings just year after year, decade after decade, degraded and degraded. Guess what? Do you think the communists, the new people owners of these buildings, put any money into them, invested anything into them? My mother recently got into one of her apartment units in Prague. And Prague is expensive. Housing is expensive. And the person had been in this unit, basically, the family had been in this unit since the war. Okay. So no investment. None, nothing, zero, zilch. And he was, I think, one of the last remaining rent control units. So you couldn't put any money. He was paying nothing, like $100 a month or whatever it was. People want stuff for free. It doesn't work that way. I mean, rent control, pricing controls, collectivism. You know what works is when a landlord says, I'm going to buy a building, I'm going to invest in it, I'm going to turn it around so it creates passive income for me. That's what works. I got to run here. Everybody's waving at me. Sam Mirejovsky on the What's Right Media Network. Rarely wrong, always right. Sam Mirejovsky here on the What's Right Media Network. Sam at what'srightshow.com is my email. And of course, this hour brought to you by Sam and Ash Injury Law, the only law firm to trust for your personal injury case. 800-304-2000, 800-304-2000, because you deserve what's right. Democrats are freaking out about what Trump did in Venezuela. You know this. You've been paying attention today. They're freaking out. They are just beside, and they are, I mean, they're almost at pains. They put things in out like, well, Maduro was a bad guy, but all of this that Trump did is so bad. And it's comedy. It's comedy because for years now, they've been advocating for Maduro's ouster. Back in 2019, here's a CNN piece. It bears mentioning. I mean, the same guy, still in power. Maduro. This was during the first Trump's term. And of course, we were coming up to a pivotal election that the Democrats, all the people on CNN were hoping Trump would lose. So here's a report just to kind of put into perspective how not that long ago, these people all felt very differently.
Even in Latin America, the same pattern. While U.S. public support for Venezuela's self-declared interim president Juan Guaido seems to have diminished, strongman Nicolas Maduro is still in power as Russia's support for him remains steadfast, sending a clear message to the world of America in retreat and Vladimir Putin filling the void. And you know, it's remarkable because Vladimir Putin isn't even that popular here in Russia right now because of the bad economic situation and a botched pension reform. So these foreign policy gifts that he keeps getting from President Trump not only make him stronger abroad, but also help keep him in power here in Russia as well, Brianna.
All right, Fred, thank you so much for that report. Okay, so, you know, one of the arguments the president makes is that these places are thousands of miles away. The U.S. doesn't need to involve itself. And hey, if Russia is going to get involved, so be it. Why is he so susceptible to this kind of message coming from Putin?
I mean, he likes authoritarian thugs. He responds to them. They probably know how to manage him and flatter him.
Putin seems to have special
maybe he has
clout with Trump.
He loves the thugs. He loves the thugs. He just wants to play patty cake with them. He doesn't want a democratically elected president. Now, you know, actually, there's a ring of truth to this because Trump doesn't care And I like this about the Trump administration, that somebody is democratically elected or not. What is this country doing to us? If they're trading with us and being fair with us and doing business with us and not harming our interests, what business is it of ours what form of government they have? No, I'm honest about this. This is the mind shift from the Bush years, right? From the neocon movement to the new Republican era under Trump. And it's a good shift. I'm just pointing out how these people are all very inconsistent about this. Chuck Schumer, for example, right? Senate minority leader now. Here he was back during Trump's first term. I think this was 2018. Oh, he was not happy about Maduro and the fact that Trump wasn't going to do anything.
He brags about all these things he wants to do or is doing, but his actions belie his words. Maybe the best metaphor was his claim to bring democracy to Venezuela. There was a big policy there. It flopped. If the policy was working, Juan Guaido wouldn't be in the balcony here. He'd be in Venezuela. He'd be sitting in the president's palace, or at least waging a fight to win. He's here. And the president brags about his Venezuela policy? Give us a break. He hasn't brought an end to the Maduro regime. The Maduro regime is more powerful today and more entrenched today than it was when the president began.
Well, Saturday, as Trump actually did all of this, right, and started the ball rolling on what I think will ultimately be fundamental change in Venezuela, Schumer called into C-SPAN from his bunker somewhere, maybe he thought he was going to be next, and said this.
Dear President Trump, say that he intends for the United States to run Venezuela. It was reckless, it was dangerous, and looking at the president's demeanor, he didn't even seem to be aware of how dangerous and reckless it is. Let me be clear. Maduro is an illegitimate dictator, but launching military action without congressional authorization, without a credible plan for what comes next, is reckless. Now, I was in the skiff on 3 different occasions, as recently as December, and I asked the administration, I asked them, are you pursuing regime change? Are you intent on taking military action in Venezuela, Venezuelan territory? And they assured me that they were not pursuing those things. Clearly, they're not being straight with the American people. So I've been talking to so many members of my caucus today. Everybody is very, very just totally troubled, worried about how dangerous this is.
Okay, Chuck Schumer is sad. The Democrats are all sad. Boo-hoo, woo-hoo. And first off, why would Trump tell Congress? Look, he doesn't have to. What Trump did is squarely within his authority as president. Like, you didn't hear me here, complaining when Obama took out Osama bin Laden. I didn't say, well, you know what? He should have gotten congressional approval for that. No, you know why? Because A, I understand the Constitution. B, I'm not a freaking moron, and I know that telling Congress, telling 600 morons who are all blabbermouths and have X, it's not going to stay secret very long, and that it will endanger American lives. Think about this, right? Just practically. An answer to the people that say, well, we should have all discussed this openly as a country and debated the war plans and decided if we're going to do it. Do you know how many Venezuelans would have to die? And Americans too, obviously. Die. So that Chuck Schumer could debate this out in the open as he proposes? Because what it would be, instead of a surgical removal, wham, bam, thank you, ma'am, 88 minutes, it would be a days-long, maybe longer even, war. You'd have a ground invasion. right? Troops on the ground. You have occupying the country and going door to door until you finally pull Maduro out of some hole somewhere. Look, it's just a realist thing, right? I'm arguing with these people. So you can see the shift, right? You can see Schumer. And then yesterday, Sunday, Schumer said this. This was on, let's see, when did he say this? This was on, of course, with George Stephanopoulos, Clinton crony, total idiot. All right, here's what Schumer said yesterday.
So what can the Congress do about it is the next question.
Well, the next question is very simple, and that is that we have the War Powers Act. That's a privileged resolution, which means the Republicans can't block it. Tim Kaine and I and Rand Paul are sponsors of it. It's going to come to the floor this week. And if it is voted for, if it's voted positively in both houses, then the president can't do another thing in Venezuela without the okay of Congress. We have to pass it.
Okay. I mean, so on one hand, you hear, and sorry, it wasn't 2018, it was 2020. You had, so 6 years ago, you had Chuck Schumer complaining that Trump wasn't doing anything in Venezuela, and now that Trump is doing something in Venezuela, whoa, wait, we want to tie his hands. This is how these people operate. This is how these people work. I'm pointing this stuff out because it's wild. And then on top of all of this, you have the libs out there, the protesters who are despondent that this dictator's been toppled, and because they of course hate Trump, and because they're socialists themselves, and basically this is this ouster of an idol of theirs. This is from a protest in Portland. Yeah, so you see big fat women walking around wearing keffiyehs and screaming into the microphone that Maduro must be released now. Seattle too. Oh my God, Nate Friedman went around at one of these protests and actually had a little interview with one of these protesters. Okay, listen to this.
I'm organized with the Revolutionary Communists of America. We're out here to say hands off Venezuela, and we unequivocally stand with the people of Venezuela against U.S. imperialist aggression.
What do you think about the people of Venezuela celebrating on the streets?
What
do you think about the people of Venezuela celebrating on the streets today?
I saw images of Venezuelans being bombed after the U.S. bombed Caracas, so I'm not sure what you're talking about, but yeah, I think you should definitely
show me the bombings that you're talking about. I didn't see any.
I don't know. I just saw it on Reddit. It was on the front page of the internet, so
okay.
I don't know.
But what do you think about the people celebrating, the hundreds of thousands of people that are in the streets celebrating?
I have yet to see it. Can you show me that?
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay, so here he pulls out the video. And he literally says, okay, shows it to him, and the guy, watch this.
U.S. imperialism.
People celebrating on the streets here. What do you think about that?
I mean, at the end of the day, I stand with the people of Venezuela against U.S. imperialism. The U.S. has no right to bomb the people of Venezuela. The U.S. has no right to kidnap another leader of another.
Celebrating? Why are they celebrating?
I don't know. Do you have a correspondent there who can ask?
It's great. These people all are living wonderfully from the bounties of a free capitalist system and are telling the poor Venezuelans who have been decimated by this murderous regime and this terrible ideology that they need to stay poor and because U.S. imperialism must be stopped at all costs. Insane stuff. Sam Mirejovsky here on the What's Right Media Network. Hi, Sam Mirejovsky here behind the What's Right microphone. Marco Rubio yesterday on Meet the Press put Kristen Welker in her place. This was so good. He got asked about the oil. And you got to understand, the administration is playing this the right way. They've got a prosecution. Okay, you don't taint the prosecution. The prosecution, it's all about the drugs. It's all about the conspiracy against the United States, right? All of this. So Marco Rubio here turns it around on the Standard Oil question, right? Because Welker asks Rubio why the U.S. needs Venezuelan oil. And he decides he's going to reject the premise. Now, I'm speaking just for myself. I'm telling you the oil is a huge factor in this. You kind of read between the lines and you realize what Rubio really saying is what I'm saying. But he's doing it without giving this to the drive-bys. Watch this.
We don't need Venezuela's oil. We have plenty of oil in the United States. What we're not going to allow is for the oil industry in Venezuela to be controlled by adversaries of the United States. You have to understand, why does China need their oil? Why does Russia need their oil? Why does Iran need their oil? They're not even in this continent. This is the Western Hemisphere. This is where we live. And we're not going to allow the Western Hemisphere to be a base of operation for adversaries, competitors, and rivals of the United States.
Have specific oil
companies. We also want to see that oil and the proceeds from it. Hold on. We want to see the oil proceeds of that country benefit the people of Venezuela. Why have 8 million people left Venezuela? 8 million, the single largest mass migration probably in modern history, left Venezuela in 2014 because all the wealth of that country was stolen to the benefit of Maduro and his cronies in the regime, but not to the benefit of people of Venezuela. You know how destabilizing 8 million migrants is? The number one fear that Brazil has, that Colombia has, that all these countries in the region have about what's happening in Venezuela and our involvement is they're afraid of another mass migration event. That's what they fear. This is deeply destabilizing stuff. It's not going to continue to happen. They are not going to come from outside of our hemisphere, destabilize our region in our own backyard, and us have to pay the price for it. Not under President Trump.
Man, you remember in Trump 1.0, the first Trump administration, at one point, we had a Secretary of State named Rex Tillerson. Look, I'm just going to say, how incredible is everybody in this new Trump administration compared to some of the bozos that we had in the first go-around? Marco Rubio is unbelievable, and he's laying it out there, and it's important, right? You need somebody who can execute, who is a good executor, which Rubio is. You also need somebody who can defend the administration, defend what's being done to all these sharks out there in the media. You got to go on the news shows. You got to fight for it. You've got to defend, and be able to explain the program. So all of this is going immensely well. Can we also talk about, if we're going to talk about the oil, one huge point that I don't hear being made very often is, didn't Venezuela steal from American companies? Didn't they steal from us? And one of the demands that we will make on whatever government ends up falling into place is that those companies, those American companies, be made whole. Over the weekend, I was talking to somebody over in Europe and some debate about payment and whether they wanted it in dollars or crowns, or meaning local currency or U.S. dollars. And we were kind of joking how the U.S. dollar is going to be a hell of a lot stronger when it's backed by this new U.S. military. Can you imagine if the Trump doctrine is, if you do business with the U.S. and American companies around the world and they invest in your country and you steal their stuff, I'm going to come and beat your money. You may end up in a courtroom, shackled, as a leader doing that kind of stuff, being dragged into court. The United States will exercise jurisdiction over you inside your presidential palace. You want backing? You want to see a U.S. dollar that's rock solid? Wow. There's a lot of moving pieces here, right? There's a lot of consequences that will flow. But again, to reiterate, to all the nation building stuff and everything, I don't see a ground invasion. And what I see is actually Trump and his whole team trying at first to see what can happen with the existing infrastructure, seeing if the Chavists themselves decide to sort of turn a page and say, okay, all right, we're not going to mess with the U.S. What do you want us to do? And we tell them what the acceptable framework is. We tell them they need to have a fair election, and they need to sort it out. Now, I've seen a lot about, and I don't know what to think of it yet, but I'm just throwing it out there that there's a component here that we haven't talked about yet. And that is that supposedly Venezuela played some role in rigging the 2020 election. Okay. And I don't know. I don't know what the answer is to that. I'm going to follow it. And I don't like to present evidence here or talk about things that are highly, highly speculative. And if I do speculate, I'll always tell you that I'm speculating. And here I'm not even comfortable really speculating because I just don't know enough about it. And yes, there is some connection. I believe that. Yeah, there's some connection. Will it come out in this trial? Maybe. Is this important to Trump? Hugely, right? Now, did Maduro get tagged and bagged just to help set the record straight on 2020? No, there's a lot more to it. I'm confident of that, okay? But is it about shoring up U.S. power in our sphere of influence? Absolutely. And the Chinese, talked a lot about the Russians and the Iranians and the Cubans. But the Chinese, they have been aggressively expanding in the Caribbean, and they have gone island to island. I mean, they are doing their, the Belt and Road Initiative, which is the Chinese way of spreading their soft power. They come in and they invest in your infrastructure. A country is, doing poorly financially, and they say, we will lend you $30 billion, whatever it is. The numbers can be quite small or quite big depending on the country, but we will secure this loan with your port or your airport or something of value. And then when the country defaults, they take strategic interest, right, within that country. And they've been doing it all over the Caribbean. And the sooner we get the Chinese out of our backyard, the safer America and the rest of the world will be. Okay? We don't need the Chinese owning a bunch of ports and airports and other infrastructure in our backyard. We just don't need that. And by the way, yes, I think Cuba is next. I do. But Cuba may very well fall on her own. All right, folks, we'll wrap it up here. I'll see you again tomorrow. We'll see what developments happen. We'll follow this up here every day this week in the What's Right studio. See you, Mirejovsky, here, over and out.